Ugh, MLP Gen 5 is looking worse than I originally imagined. With all of the star pens collected, the Precure acquired a new pen and evolved form for Fuwa, which, as I mentioned last week, I was going to share my opinion on. And it is a resounding... I mean, I've heard people outright say they hate this new form, but honestly, I don't think it's even really worth getting upset over, though it's also not really worth praising either. For as much as I lambasted her, I thought Fuwa's original design was actually pretty good. It was unique enough that it made her stand out in a crowd of mascot characters. This is trying to capitalize on the fact that Gen 4 MLP is coming to an end soon. Last week, I made a Pokemon reference, and if I were to equate Fuwa to a Gen 1 mon, I would say Jigglypuff. A fairly unique and interesting design that turns into a kind of pedestrian, cute animal thing. Ultimately, I have nothing really against it, but would not call it an upgrade in the slightest. Though, judging by the fact that they switched out the Fuwas last week, and are already being added to the opening sequence, I guess they're really banking on selling them plushies. You know, between this and the fact that 01 has already introduced 3 riders in its first 3 episodes, makes me think a certain company is getting a little desperate. Also, this guy's name is Fuwa for some reason.
Coincidence? I think not!
Anyway, on to the actual episode. The Precure returned to Earth and met with Top Art to discuss their latest developments. Which, along with Fuwa's new form, she also gained the ability to speak in more complete sentences. Still, according to Arteria here, Fuwa required further development, I'm guessing because she wanted to ride her later. Actually, her development was key to restoring light and peace to the universe, which of course included Planet Rainbow. Considering that they might interfere with their plans, Top Art suggested they make the first move and attack the Note Raiders head on. However, Uni shot down that idea, as having worked at that HQ for an extended period, she knew that would be impossible. As even if they had the exact coordinates, only a direct warp would be able to get them inside. I'm guessing Fuwa's warps wouldn't work. And circling it would be impossible, as it was stationed right in front of a black hole, which would actually play into something else in this episode, but more on that later. For now, Galogre was rightfully apologizing for one of the worst debuts for a high-ranking general in the entire franchise. Luckily, Darkness must have drank his coffee this morning, as he was feeling generous and even gave Galogre a further power-up to his bracelet. And when Gepard offered to take up the next fight, he denied him, saying that he had to basically go and reclaim his honor. Hey, you sure you don't want to put on this red shirt before you go? Okay, Galogre doesn't actually die in this episode, but come on, those were a couple of the most common villain death flags ever. Anyway, we cut back to the Precure with a nice shot of Uni in which we get to see her reflection in the water kind of looking like her true form. Since the Precure had clearly never owned a Tamagotchi in their lives, they figured the best way to raise Fuwa was just to stuff her face with all kinds of high-calorie, low-nutrient foods, which, yeah, led to predictable results. Maybe next time you should feed your horse a few more veggies, because as a result, Fuwa flew off, probably to burn off those calories, and ended up flying directly into the hands of Galogre. Okay, even if it was by accident, Galogre just completed one of his primary objectives. So, maybe there is hope of salvaging this guy after all. This character had barely anything to him, and yet they took even that away from him. I mean, I get it. Fuwa looks significantly different than she did last week, and Galogre's super focused on his mission and everything. My problem is, why even bother including this scene in the first place other than for a cheap gag?
Very funny.
It only further buries a villain who's already neck deep into the hole. So the Precure transformed and engaged him. And again, early on, the super ripped blue man took the early advantage and possibly recognized Top Art, otherwise this was an awkward pause. Just like his last fight, Galogre spammed his teleportation ability, forcing the Precure to take an aggressive offensive, and oh wow, this is some cheap looking animation. I know one thing for sure, somebody messed up real bad with drawing your tiny head and huge right eye. It's worth mentioning that this week's animation director was Akira Takahashi, who is also the character designer of the show. And while he can be a very competent key animator with even some brief shots like this, asking him to do a full episode with limited budget and time might be a bit much for the guy. Not the worst animated fight of the season, but it really should be at least on par with last week's episode. Still, while the fight animation wasn't the best, I do like Galogre's big speech in the middle of this fight. In it, he explained his and the other generals, minus I1's, backstories, which, even though that's another common death flag, it was at least interesting. As Capard had hinted back in episode 10, they had indeed lost their planets to the darkness, or to be more precise, the black hole behind the Nota Raiders HQ that had destroyed their planets, leaving them likely the last survivors of their respective races. And when the three had lost all hope, a certain agent of Cobra appeared in front of them to give them a new purpose in life. Okay, legit calling it right now, Darkness created that black hole to drive his generals into despair and convince them to work for him. So basically he's the darts of this show, and that's never really a good thing. Galogre then further dressed down the Precure by pointing out their over-reliance on their fairy friend. Dude, if you had just been around for some of the more recent series, I think a lot of our complaints regarding this franchise would just vanish. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, in spite of his sheer lack of impact on this series, I do like Galogre's deconstruction of the Precure trope of the heroines often relying too much on their mascot characters to bail them out of tough situations, kind of like last week, and unfortunately it will happen again this week, but it does open up some interesting possibilities, so we'll see where this goes. For now, after a cute new eye catch, Galogre delivered a good old DBZ up and down combo and had Hikaru cornered. Of course, being the leader of this team, Hikaru was bailed out by the 6th Ranger. You know, Hikaru, this is exactly why Uni and Lala made the top 25 and you didn't. FYI, I might do a video about the popularity polls, we'll have to see how my schedule works out. To be fair, Uni did have the closest connection to Galogre, having been a wrongdoer herself in more ways than one. But she denounced her old ways while also giving the big guy a peek up her skirt. Seriously, what's with that look? Anyway, each of the Cures took a turn to argue Galogre's points before rounding back to Hikaru because now of all times she starts to act like an actual leader. To sum it all up, they admitted that Galogre was right about them not truly understanding everyone and everything the universe had and could take away from them, but all that truly mattered to them was protecting their now four-legged friend. Thus, after Galogre launched one last and really slow attack, seriously they could probably just dodge that thing, Fuwa released a new power-up and product placement. Don't worry, fathers across Japan, this little number actually comes with the cheaply made plushie you'll have to buy for your daughters. Just give us our 6,000 yen up front. After pledging their allegiance to the cult of Fuwa, come on, that's totally what this is, the Precure received new forms that will only ever be used in their new finisher because what else is new? And they're honestly pretty good designs. I like that each of them have their own unique dress apart from the crowns. Just kind of wish we got to see more of them because this is unfortunately a very busy animation where hardly anything holds on a shot for more than a few seconds. Anyway, they defeated Galogre, this time completely destroying the bracelet. Hey, what happened to that warp of yours, dude? But out of its remains, Darkness greeted his enemies for the first time. He then mentioned something about Fuwa being a vessel before disappearing with an evil laugh because this guy so far has been a very cliche villain. Galogre also teleported away, understandably, with his head down. Dude, you are officially Vader in the WWF and Hikaru is your Shawn Michaels. The new pen transported the Precures back to the Star Palace as apparently the princesses had even more things on their to-do list for them. Yep, they were sending our heroines on yet another fetch quest. So what, do they have to look for the Ranger keys now? Actually, they had to find something called the Twinkle Imagination, which they had no idea what it was or where to find it, but hey, we only have like about 20 episodes left with what looks like is going to be a filler episode next week, so may as well leave it as vague as possible. Seriously, I'm making the same face as Uni right now. Thus, the episode ended with Tapard retracting his request to have the Precure join the Hoshizora Alliance, because the status quo is God, I guess, but still offering them support from the Amanogawa station near Earth. And hey, maybe they could pick up one of the top 25 most popular Precure from there. I'll say right now, the backstories they've given the villains in this episode are kind of interesting and might even benefit their characters on down the line, but whether or not they'll be able to salvage their characters is a slightly different matter. While the win-loss record may be for the most part irrelevant for lesser evil general characters, Galogre was built up as one of the higher-ups like Joker from Smile. Though unlike Joker, who defeated the Smile team twice in a row before suffering his first real loss, Galogre has suffered 2 straight losses right out of the gate. It not only makes the character look weak, but by extension also the whole group, as supposedly he's one of their best. An easy solution to this would have been to let Capard be the villain of these 2 episodes. He's an established loser, so taking a couple more L's wouldn't hurt him that much. Heck, as I mentioned, Capart was the one who originally hinted at the tragic backstories for the generals, so why not have him follow up on that? He could even make this gag work better because he is an established narcissist who wouldn't pick up on little details unrelated to him. Instead, by shifting it to Galogre, they now kind of have these two villains with redundant traits. All that said, these three are at least getting motivations that could at least lead to some interesting moral debates with the Precure as long as they follow up on this properly. Because even if he is a bit of a hypocrite by relying on Darkness's powers, Galogre was not totally wrong when he pointed out that the Precure have been playing on easy mode throughout the series thanks to Fuwa. Really at this point, I just hope someone from the Notarators get a win, because as is, they are one of the least threatening Precure villain groups ever. Otherwise, this was a fine episode on its own with little bits of characterization for everyone. Sorry I didn't have time to go over all of them. If you haven't seen it yet, I just uploaded the second half of Volume 2 of my Hakuto manga review. It was actually a really fun read for me and everything, but if I could borrow a quote from another popular time travel series, I would also call it...
Whoa, this is heavy.
Enjoy it, and until next time though, farewell for now my friends, and... I might have a lot of work on my hands.